Remember that all life on our planet is interdependent, so every living thing depends on others.
Humans are very dependent on all of the natural resources that nature provides us with.
Organisms ecologically interdependent on each other.
We're all connected.
No creature can live without other creatures. The interdependence also extends to our great atmosphere, the gas that we breathe in each day.
The factors of sunlight and temperature variation and rainfall variation.
Those kinds of factors have a lot to do with the way the living things can live.
Ecology is a branch of biology that studies all living organisms, interactions among these organisms, and relationships between organisms and the physical environment. Ecosystems are communities of interdependent organisms also with the physical environments, taking into consideration both the biotic, living, and abiotic, non-living elements.
An ecosystem will often have rocks and water and air that are not organic in nature. Those are the abiotic components, and they will be resources for all of the biotic components, the trees, the organisms, the insects, the invertebrates, the birds. And so an ecosystem really is a natural functioning system of organisms working together to survive.
And the concept of an ecosystem is a new term, and it's a new way of looking at biodiversity, looking at conservation, looking at how matter and energy cycles through systems, how animals are related to each other, all the different relationships.
Throughout the 18th and the beginning of the 19th century, great maritime powers launched many world exploratory expeditions to develop commerce with other countries and to develop new natural resources. Botanists such as Alexander von Humboldt joined these expeditions. He is often considered the father of ecology, as he was the first to study the relationship between organisms and their environment. In the 1920s, Vladimir Vernadsky detailed the idea of the biosphere. Instead of viewing ourselves as individual separate organisms, the biosphere provides us with a way for us to see ourselves as part of a whole living, breathing entity, Earth. Human activities, such as nuclear energy, industrialization, pollution, population growth, and overexploitation of natural resources, have greatly changed the way we look at our planet. This awareness has led to many individuals and organizations who focus on the conservation and preservation of the Earth's ecosystems.
There are more than 6 billion people on the planet, and we do not just live by eating food and expelling waste. Humans have industrial processes that also require a kind of food, require metals, require substances from rocks, require energy to drive our industries. And that all serves as a kind of metabolism, a new kind of metabolism that is affecting the planet in many, many different ways.
I think earlier societies considered nature a resource that was here for humans to use and was not something that we need to protect. But now we come to realize that we are dependent on this set of resources, and we are also responsible for it.
The concept of an ecosystem can apply to units of variable size: a pond, a field, even a piece of dead wood. From the smallest, called microecosystems, to the largest.
The largest scale regions in ecology are called biomes. You know many of them already: deserts, tundra, the boreal forests, let's say of Canada or Siberia, the tropical rainforests. These are all very large geographical regions that have approximately the same temperature, approximately the same rainfall, and therefore somewhat of a similar kind of vegetation. Within the tropical biome or within the Arctic tundra, there are many, many different species. But there's a kind of a similarity across that entire region that we call them biomes.
There are other biomes as well, such as deciduous forests, grasslands, and the aquatic systems. 75% of the Earth is covered in water, including fresh water, like rivers and lakes, and marine, like oceans and coral reefs.
A coral reef ecosystem would consist of the water, which isn't living, right? But the temperature of the water is very important. It's salt water, that's very important. It also consists, however, of course, of the corals, which are living things and are animals, not plants. And it also consists of all the other animals and the algae and the plants that are around.
Every ecological system has a community of living organisms. The greatest amount of biodiversity is found in the tropical rainforests, hot, moist biomes located around the world near the equator.
They differ in their species, of course, but they all are very lush. In fact, they're the most diverse systems of life on the planet. There are places in South America where within an area as large as a typical United States school, there will be as many species of trees or more than found in all of North America or all of the United States.
Within a rainforest or a desert or any biome, the living organisms of an ecosystem share an interdependence of life.
The meaning of the interdependence of life is really how animals and plants and other organisms survive by using all the resources that they need, which are often other species.
So what about plants which make their own food? A plant is often dependent on insects for pollination and other organisms for its nutrients.
Very interestingly, the nutrients it's getting from the soil, that its roots are pulling up through the water, those nutrients, for the most part, come from the waste of other creatures in the soil that are chewing up, let's say, the leaves or the needles and returning those to waste forms, chemical forms that can be pulled up by the roots of those trees.
Organisms create more and more complex interdependencies between them, and these are often what we call niches, where each organism finds a set of resources that it's very good at using or very well adapted to access, and it can outcompete other potential competitors to use those very specific resources.
A niche is a place in an ecosystem. It's a job within an ecosystem. You have predators, you have like carnivorous animals, you have grazers, you have scavengers, and there are little niches where those types of animals are needed.
So with birds of prey feeding on field mice, hawks circling above and getting the field mice, one can say that there's a field mice niche, that there is a niche for some creature to eat the field mice, and those creatures are the birds of prey that are up in the air.
There are many different ways that plants and animals and other organisms interact. Some of the most common ones that we would think of would be predator-prey relationships, where one organism provides food for another.
It's really cool. If you ever look up at a slide of microorganisms, the bigger ones like to eat the little ones, and the little ones eat the bacteria and the algae. And if the bigger ones eat up all the little ones and they don't have any more food, then they start to die off as well. Some organisms don't act like that, but mostly it's bigger eats little.
But that's not the only kind. Sometimes we have relationships where organisms are parasites, and they don't necessarily consume the other organism, but they might use that organism as a food source. So an example of a parasite would be a flea on a dog. It's not going to eat the dog, but it's certainly going to take little nibbles out of him.
Other times, there's a relationship that's commensal, that they live together and they feed off each other in some way, but they don't really harm each other at all. In fact, they may help each other. Like the sea anemone and clownfish. The anemones, they've got stingers. They're related to jellyfish. So if something touches an anemone, it'll get stuck. Well, the clownfish appears to be immune to the sting of the anemone. Now, some people think that it kind of goes around the outside and kind of gets coated with the anemone's own mucus, and then when it goes into the anemone thinks it's touching itself, so it doesn't sting the clownfish. So then the clownfish can go inside and be safe, but being there doesn't harm the anemone at all.
Other relationships involve mutualism or symbiosis, where both organisms gain benefit. An example of that might be gut flora or small microbes inside the stomach of many animals. Even humans have flora inside our stomachs that help us digest very difficult material that we couldn't otherwise access. And we provide them a very comfortable home where they have all the food they need in a very nice climate-controlled chamber. And so it's really a win-win situation.
All living organisms need nutrients. They need to eat. Trophic refers to nutrition. Most organisms get these nutrients through producers, or autotrophs. These are organisms that make their own food through photosynthesis by capturing energy from the sun and converting it into chemical energy. An example is any plant. In fact, all plants are producers.
What we call plants are the organisms that perform photosynthesis on land. There are also organisms called algae and even some kinds of bacteria that perform photosynthesis in the ocean.
If an organism cannot produce its own food, it must obtain food from other sources. These organisms are called consumers or heterotrophs. Consumers include herbivores. Those are vegetarian creatures that only eat plants, such as grasshoppers and kangaroos. Carnivores eat only other animals. Examples of carnivores are frogs, snakes, hawks, and spiders. Omnivores eat both plants and animals, and they include bears, turtles, monkeys, and squirrels. Scavengers and decomposers are two other important kinds of organisms. Scavengers, including such organisms as vultures, are essentially garbage collectors, feeding on others' leftovers and dead organisms. Decomposers, including certain bacteria and fungi, break down non-living organic matter, and they return nutrients back into the soil for the producers to use again. Food chains are a way of looking at basic trophic or nutritional interactions and are made up of producers, consumers, and decomposers. But food chains can be an oversimplification.
When I was in school, we used to talk about the food chain like it was very simple, from the sun to a plant to a cow to a wolf. And of course, nothing's that simple in life, in biology. The food web is just kind of a way to show you that things have more than one predator, that things that are predators are often also prey at different times. And again, the interconnectedness and how you don't know if you drop a species out, how that's going to affect everything else.
While food webs present a more accurate picture of organisms' eating relationships, the trophic pyramid describes how energy, which we all get from the sun, is transferred from producers to consumers through what we call trophic levels.
The first trophic level would be our autotrophs, our plants that produce their own food. We have lots and lots and lots and lots of plants. The second trophic level would be herbivores that come and eat that food. The next level would be carnivores who eat the herbivores. That would be trophic level 3.
And the final trophic level consists of top consumers in the ecosystem, organisms such as lions and wolves. Although ecosystems start with a tremendous amount of energy, much is lost between trophic levels.
You never really have more than 4 trophic levels, 4 or 5 trophic levels in an ecosystem because there's not enough energy left at the top.
Typically, only 10% is passed from one level to the next. The other 90% or so is used for living and growing and is lost to the atmosphere as heat.
Energy flows through a natural system and it doesn't cycle, but matter cycles and is continually being reinvented and recycled or reused.
So while energy flows in one way, matter is constantly recycled in and out of the ecosystem. These are called biogeochemical cycles.
Biogeochemical cycles. It's biology, geology, chemistry, and its cycles.
We think of perhaps the hydrologic cycle as one that affects us on a daily basis because it determines whether or not we're going to have rain on any given day. So water that is held in the clouds will condense and fall as rain. It will often flow into rivers. It will usually go out towards the sea or into a large body of water, and then it will evaporate back up into the atmosphere where it will sit in clouds until it condenses. So it's cycling through. And many minerals, many chemicals also cycle through natural systems in a variety of ways.
Other cycles include the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, and the carbon cycle.
The carbon cycle involves all of the carbon that's locked up in all of the biomass or all of the living tissue, and we are made of lots and lots of carbon.
Humans, plants, all living organisms are carbon-based. Carbon cycle is the process in which carbon is cycled through the air, the ground, plants, animals, and fossil fuels. There are short carbon cycles, which take days to thousands of years, and long ones which can take millions. An example of a short cycle is between plants and animals during photosynthesis. Animals release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as a waste product of respiration. Plants need carbon dioxide, along with sunlight, water, and other nutrients, not only to make their food and the food we ultimately consume, but also to produce the important oxygen we breathe. An example of a long-term carbon cycle is when carbon-based plants and animals get buried and are locked up for millions of years and become fossil fuels.
Humans right now are extracting from deep within the earth coal and oil and natural gas, which are all remnants of different kinds of creatures that lived many, many millions of years ago. And we're burning them just as we could burn wood. And that's creating carbon dioxide, which is going into the atmosphere. That's not part of this very simple, quick cycle between animals and plants that carbon dioxide loops around. This is carbon that has been out of the system for a long, long time that we are now very rapidly putting into the system.
Humans are altering the carbon cycle in major ways by producing emissions from cars and trains and automobiles and factory smokestacks. We are having a significant effect on the amount of carbon dioxide that goes into the air. It's blanketing the earth in a blanket. It's called the greenhouse effect. It's keeping us very warm.
In recent years, the greenhouse effect has become a major focus among the scientific community. Many people believe the increased level of carbon dioxide emissions is already affecting the Earth's weather patterns and temperatures. When rainforests are burned and destroyed, vast amounts of carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. And at the same time, there is a reduction of the amount of oxygen producing plants, which disrupts the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide.
Rainforests are one of our carbon sinks, in a sense, in that they take in huge amounts of carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. If we cut them down, then we lose that. We lose our lungs, in a sense. We have other carbon sinks. Oceans are carbon sinks as well. It's held up in oceans as calcium carbonate. But rainforests are crucial. Trees and any kind of vegetation in general is crucial towards maintaining levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
I think a good example of ecosystems that can easily be disrupted can be found in rainforests. But even deciduous forests are very complex systems with many layers and levels, with trees and shrubs and grasses all interacting together. And when we start to clear those forests, we destroy that structural complexity, and thereby we weaken all of the links in those ecosystems, and we create opportunities for organisms to become vulnerable or even to go extinct.
Without all of the players, imagine if we didn't have critters that break down dead things. The world would be just a huge garbage dump. There would be carcasses everywhere. You couldn't move. So even things that you think are kind of disgusting are absolutely necessary for life to function.
I think conservation is a huge issue right now. Humans now number over 6 billion. We've taken over the planet. We've taken over every single habitat there is on Earth.
Therefore, it is really crucial that we pay attention and we think about what we're doing to the planet. And not just for other creatures, but for even ourselves. Because since we're dependent upon the atmosphere, we're dependent upon the water, what we do to it comes back and affects us. So this is putting us into a new state of being, and I think a new state of understanding our interdependence with not just other creatures, but the entire giant biosphere that we live within.